Good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is Monday, February 22nd, 2010. It's on or about 7 p.m. This evening, City Council is going to be meeting in a series of committee meetings, starting first with Finance and Personnel. Committee Chair Jim Sands.
First on our agenda is a presentation from a representative of Beautification Day, a student senate project. Unless Wendy Jackmus would like to wing it, I don't see anybody here to speak to that. So we're going to move on to our next couple agenda items, and we'll come back if somebody shows up. Secondly, I was going to ask Matt Green, who's working as an engineer back here with the government channel. He is the man in charge of our Athens city television programming, and he has made a request for some new equipment for the channel, and I think council members have copies of that. But what I wanted to ask Matt, two things, was to explain what these are, because I don't know what this means, and secondly, he has mentioned that ACT TV would be able to throw a 25% match toward any purchases of this material. So I wanted him to explain some of the methods he's been raising funds.
All right. The first thing that we're requesting, which would be the most important, is what's called CastNet Solo. And that would replace our current playback system, which is what keeps everything on the air. Currently, in order for us to update our schedule during the day, we have to go off the air and put color bars on the screen, or play back a tape, which whenever we play back a tape, it shakes all over the screen and looks pretty pathetic. So that would be the most important thing for us to replace first. And that will also allow us to, once the media is on a drive at the studio, we can control it from anywhere on the internet, just through a browser-based system. That will also allow us to give usernames and passwords to different organizations throughout the community, like Red Cross, Habitat for Humanity. About whatever events they're going to have coming up in the future, they can log on and fill out basically a web form, and it will automatically go on the air, or I'll get an email, and then I can approve it. So there's a bunch of security measures too, so not just anybody can throw whatever they want on the television. It has to be approved by somebody, whether it be somebody at their organization that's been appointed to oversee it, or myself. The other items would be 3 Mac computers. Like I said when I was here before, some of our computers are so old that we've had software donated down to us from the government channel that we can't run on any of the computers we currently have. And I've had a Final Cut Pro training scheduled, which, thanks to the snow, we've had to push back. It's actually going to start tomorrow, God willing. So I bought a nice little training DVD that came with some tutorial files and stuff, and I can't even open those up on our computers because our computers are too old. And the training DVD I bought was for version 5, and the new version of Final Cut Pro is version 8. So that shows how far behind we are. Another item would be the, I left my papers in there because I came out here faster than I expected. Yeah, thanks, Ken. Yeah. The last item is the compact universal telephone audio interface. We've had a lot of requests for live call-in shows, which we haven't really been able to do. We've tried it out before where some producers have been able to use their cell phone, which if we re-air the program to them and left on their voicemail. So there's so the audio interface for the live call-in shows would probably spark some new interest for different programming for people to come in and start doing. The LCD monitors would go with the new computers, and the Final Cut Pro Studio software you see there would also be for those new computers.
All of this equipment supports your efforts to bring people into ACT TV, OU students, high school students, older people like us.
I would say actually the majority of our producers are older and retired. We have some high school students and some college students. We got a new show brought into us over the weekend, and it's from a college student here. Right now we produce 9 shows weekly on average in our studio. For one of them is this like a sports talk show that's done every day, and then we have that would leave 7 others that are also done. So it stays pretty busy.
Okay, good.
And to point out, the reason I think that has grown in the last year is from the $20,000 you guys appropriated last year for us to get new equipment. And instead of these big, huge, bulky cameras that work sometimes, we now have nice HD cameras that continually work, and a new system in the studio that allows us to do both in the studio productions and go out into the field where we've done baseball games, football games, and other community events.
What are some of the fundraising efforts that you've been making recently?
We tried a telethon one year. We didn't have a whole lot of luck. We did spark some of our community producers to actually start donating some funds to us when we started the telethon, and they've continued for 3 years in a row making a generous donation. We're also getting ready to try and launch an underwriting program for local businesses to help support, and I can't say exactly how that's going to go. We're trying to make it a nice feasible cost of $100 a month, or $500 for 6 months, or $900 a year per business. So hopefully we can make that grow. We'll see how it turns out.
Currently, Athens City Television operates on a budget of about $50,000 a year. It's budgeted a line item in our process that we've gone through. The money comes from our cable franchise fee with Time Warner. People who have been following this remember that our previous law director, Gary Hunter, was in continual negotiations for several years with them about this fee. Turns out that the state has taken over these negotiations, and we as a city are no longer involved in that. But we continue to collect about $100,000 a year. At this point, there's about $70,000 unappropriated in this line. And Matt is asking for a total of $13,105. He says that ACT-TV can put up about $3,200, so they're asking us to put up $9,800 for this new equipment. This is an activity that City Council has felt was important, an important use of these funds, and so we are having this discussion. Do we want to go ahead and bring this forward at next meeting? Any more questions for Matt or comments? President Biden.
Just a couple of comments. Well, one comment, one question. It's really nice not to have the complaints that we used to have before you folks took over. I don't know of one complaint that has come before council. Is that true, Debbie, since...
Yeah, the only complaints that I've received is basically when something doesn't play back, or something happens with the equipment and we're off the air for some reason or another. So.
Yeah. So congratulations on
Thanks.
that. You're doing something right. And the other thing I hear is that our biggest local star, Big Jim, is back. Is that correct?
He was back here for a couple weeks and then flew back to New Hampshire. And he just got back to Ohio this morning. He drove all night from New Hampshire last night through this morning and got back here. So. And
will we be seeing him on Access TV soon?
Yep. I went out with him and we shot a new show at Kaiser's Barbecue Shack and Athens Underground and some new green smarts, and trying to help him put together a new format that's not him just walking around with a camera shaking it all over the place, making the viewers seasick. So.
Well, I predict that will be our first syndicated show.
Yes, Member
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Knowing that we're potentially facing some budget challenges here in an upcoming year or two, I'm curious about if you were to look at this list and consider what I think you said was necessary, more important, or more valid, what would you list or what would you acknowledge or inform us as to being order of importance here?
The most important thing would be the CastNet Solo system, because
Okay.
that's what will keep us on the air so people can actually view us. And then the computers would be
The Mac Minis?
Yeah. Those would be the most important things. We can operate with, the only thing is with the new computers, when Apple switched from Motorola chipset to Intel, the software that we currently have will not run on the new computers because of the compatibility issues. So that's why we would have to get new software as well. But yeah, definitely the CastNet Solo would be the most important equipment for us to get.
And when, for clarification, when you're acknowledging new software, you mean the Final Cut
Yes.
Studio 3
Yeah.
would be the new software you're...
Yep.
Okay.
That would be there for our producers to use to edit their programs together.
Good question. Everyone. Other questions or comments? Okay, if it's okay, I'll bring forth an ordinance next week, and we'll discuss this further, full amount versus some version of that. So, Matt, we'll be talking about it for the next couple of weeks.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you. I think Member Bain has something to add to the committee meeting.
This is from the Internal Service Fund, which has one part that is repairing automobiles, the other part is taking care of our computers. Ron Forrest is the person in question. And we have set aside annually about $20,000 to purchase new computers. And before he had much of a chance to purchase new computers, he had to buy a firewall and some other software. Therefore, because we do have adequate resources in the unappropriated balance, I'd like to bring forward or have Jim add to his existing ordinance a proposal to appropriate $15,000 from the unappropriated balance to take care of that expenditure so we can continue on with the ongoing process of replacing the computers. Anybody have any questions? We'll get Ron out here. Yep.
Mayor Weil?
I'm aware that the server that, all the hardware that runs the firewall crashed about 2 weeks ago, and we had to, basically scramble for that to get it up and running again. So I'm aware that this was an unexpected cost. And I know that we're also working on trying to put a better cooling system in the server room, too.
This is what Member Bain is speaking of. We talked a couple years ago that we needed to replace computers throughout the city and do it on a regular basis rather than wait 3 years and then have to do a whole bunch of them. So we're trying to get back on schedule again, in spite of these larger unanticipated costs. Auditor Heck?
Well, I was just going to add to that it's also nice to know that money is there when someone's computer starts acting up, and we don't have to wait for an appropriation because we don't have the money. In our office, we can't operate without our computers, and everybody wants to get paid, and bills need to be paid. So the process just works out better for us too. And we're on a rotating schedule, replacing just like 2 at a time, so that we can keep them up and running. And I'm sure other offices feel the same way. Instead of waiting for it to crash and not be able to do anything, just expedites the procedure.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
So you can add that to your appropriation ordinance from the Internal Service Fund.
Okay. I think Member Kuhn had something else to say.
Yes, I do, regarding police vehicles. The police department has requested the purchase of one marked vehicle for 2010. They understand our tight budget, and historically they have received 2 cruisers per year. However, in 2009 they did not receive any. They have 2 Impalas that need to be retired. One has a slipping transmission, which is pretty scary if they're responding to an emergency. Apparently, the Impala's transmissions and brakes don't hold up don't hold up very well. The cost would be approximately $33,000, which would include the equipment for mobile computing, lights, prisoner transport, striping, etc. The vehicles that are available on state bid are, of course, the Impalas, which they're really not interested in because they don't hold up well. The Dodge Charger, which they don't really have any experience with, and there may not be enough room for the build-out of the in-car computer system. I'm not sure I said that right. And the Ford Crown Victoria. They have 3 of them now. They consider them excellent vehicles. They hold up well in city driving. They're big enough for the in-car computer build-out system. And so they are requesting that they get at least one vehicle in 2010. Does anybody have anything to add to that?
Did the auditor
Not to
start
that,
to raise
I'm
her hand?
sorry.
And the proposal is to take the money out of capital improvements, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you. Any questions, comments? Again, council has talked about in the past that we need to replace vehicles on a regular basis, and as Member Kuhn mentioned, there were no replacements in 2009. Did they need to retire a vehicle in 2009?
I don't know if they have, I don't think they have retired.
They retire one.
But they want to actually retire 2 and just purchase one.
So this is a regular item that in our end of the year considerations with the budget, we thought we were in more dire straits than we really are. We're not in great financial shape, but these are some considerations, these 3 requests that we've had. So we will bring these forward next Monday, and then we'll just need to decide on how we want to handle this. Member Butler.
Thank you. I just wanted to add briefly on a side note pertaining to future requests or concerns that we might look at related to police cruisers, is that I'd also like to introduce the idea of eventually adding some motorcycle vehicles to the fleet. I think in general, and I'd have to do some more research on this, but they might get better gas mileage and use a little less emissions polluting efforts. So something I'd like us to look at or consider, or maybe have a dialogue with the police department about. Thanks.
Thank you. Mel,
It should be mentioned, this request was put forward by Captain Pyle sometime February 15th. He is talking about retiring two of the Impalas and coming down from a 7-mark cruise down to 6. Part of the reason why they can do that is they got that grant for that Kawasaki Mule out there, which they like to use. They use it as a special detail vehicle, mostly for cruising the Mill Street area, I believe. But that's actually part of the force right now, I guess you could call it. As for motorcycles, they're fair weather vehicles, so you have to be aware of that too. But at the same time, I know there's been discussion of that.
Well, and I would add, interestingly enough, if I may interrupt, thank you, that you can equip them with heated grips and heated suits. So there's a fair amount of weather you could be in them. Mm-hmm. Maybe just the snow or ice would be the only one.
Okay, and they haven't had any new cruises since 2008. They did, of course, get one unmarked at that time, I believe, if you remember.
okay. Thank you. Okay. So we'll go back and ask if a representative from Beautification Day Program has arrived. Seeing none.
I have miscellaneous too.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Essentially, there is a last year we got the grant, stimulus package grant for the bus system. I remember about $179,000, which we pulled some out of and used, encumbered about $133. We have a balance that has to be appropriated, about $43,386.39. Most of this actually came back from, if my memory is correct, for maintenance, the maintenance part of the bus stimulus package money. This is for our bus system. I think we bought some fare boxes. Part of it is to go to a new bus, stimulus package bus. That will be the second bus that's on order right now. The heavy lift, these were all encumbered before, so the money has already been blocked out, with the exception of $43,000, since that wasn't really spent down or done anything with. So the idea is to get it back into the mix by appropriation. This is under recommendation of the auditor at this point. It will put us money back into flow for that. I can give you more information if you need it further down the line or so.
Okay, probably would.
Okay, and again, this goes to a bus shelter. We're going to be getting a replacement bus shelter, probably put it by the parking garage here, a larger one. Fare boxes, I think, have already been received. I think the bus racks, bike racks are still on order, but again, we have that. And then, as I say, about $61,000 for a heavy bus lift at the service garage, bus garage, and $60,000 for the Tesco light transit bus. So those are already been blocked out. It's just the maintenance part that we never really tied up, and it just fell through it just basically disappeared at the end of the year.
Okay. So, okay, fine. We'll
Okay.
just bring that up. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
And this is personnel too, right? So,
Yes, it is.
Sherry, were you going to cover the police? I guess one of the things we want to mention is that we are starting the process, if you've looked at the paper, for starting a hiring process for a policeman and a fireman, mostly to replace those that have that anticipated changes that are going to be occurring in personnel. I don't know if that falls under your safety one or...
I hadn't planned to speak about it tonight.
You
but
had or had?
I had not.
Okay.
So if you'd like to, go right ahead.
No, well, this is just to give you a heads up. Essentially, what you're seeing is that the anticipation is that the police chief will be retiring soon, and there'll be a shift upward as the chief tests and the captain tests and everything like that. And we have had a captain, fire captain, go out in terms of disability, I believe it was. So there would be a shake-up within that. So the process being about a year-long process, we figure we have to start it up, at least putting those out there to replace what we have right now. So I'm just giving you information on that.
And the police officer is replacing her?
Roger Dudorf is being replaced, yes, but that's the present lineup right now, but there's still going to be an opening later this year. I think that answers, I covered it all there.
That's it? That's it, auditor?
That's it.
Okay, so we really are going to close this committee now. Thank you.
On to Planning and Development Committee, Committee Chair Chris Bull.
Thank you, Mr. President. First tonight, I would like to cover an idea that has been floating around the city for a while is contractor registration. This was worked on by Kathy Heck and John Paskey, our Director of Code Enforcement. It has two basic parts. The first part is looking at the instilling a registration process and program for contractors in the city of Athens. This would be in the Athens City Code 11.10. And basically, it's been emailed to all of you, and it puts forward all the different types of requirements, fees, license requirements, and standards for the registration. The auditor and the code enforcement director has also come up with a packet that's been forwarded to you for the application itself, the application packet and information. Basically, the idea behind this is one, to help make more uniform contractors within the city of Athens, make sure that people are bonded, to help consumers who do negotiate and contract with the contractors. It also will help to ensure that tax receipts are received by the auditor. And I also think that it will help to level the playing field, because then everybody who does the right thing, the contractors who are bonded and have the proper licenses, the people of Athens know that, and they know that they're getting a good, that they have been identified and registered by the city, which I think is fair, because they are playing by the rules, and it will only make sure that they're being identified by the city as playing by the rules. The second part of the ordinance is concerning the Athens City Code Title 31, which is the building regulations. And this also went out, it's very thick, because basically what it's going to do is take this multiple page, 50 pages or so, building regulations, and replace it with Chapter 310201, which basically says that the City of Athens hereby adopts the 2000 Residential Code of Ohio for 1, 2, and 3 family dwellings, and the latest additions. And so basically what we're replacing is a bunch of specific regulations that we've not really been able to enforce, because we don't have a building office. We have a code enforcement office, which is different than a building department. Identifying the Residential Code of Ohio as our code, as our building regulations. I think that this will help reduce the amount of paperwork people have to look at when looking at building within the city of Athens. It definitely makes it more streamlined. There's also many contractors and developers and builders already are very acquainted with the code, because it is the state code, so that will help out-of-town builders also. It doesn't make for a large hurdle that they have to know a whole new code. And this also, in this building, the building regulations, includes the regulation that contractors will be registered. That's also one of the changes. Kathy, do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so. You did a good job covering that, unless anybody has any questions. As Member Fall said, this Title 31, we don't have a plumbing inspector anymore. We don't license plumbers. The state does. We register plumbers and electricians. There's a difference there. We don't go out and inspect their work. They're already licensed by the state, so there's no need for us to have all these rules and regulations in place, because, as Member Fall said, we don't have a building department that's able to go out there and do that, and it's not necessary. As far as the ADA regulations, we've changed that to say that we adopt the state code as opposed to trying to rewrite it in our code. If they make changes at the state level, then we automatically follow that by referencing the state requirements. And the registration, as Member Fall said, we've been talking about this for a long time, and there's just a lot of good things to come from this. As she said, people who are already out there with insurance and bonding and paying workers' comp, they are doing the right thing, and this makes sure that the other contractors are also, and it gives us a way to track people and collect taxes from the city. And also for the community, if you do hire someone and you have an issue, if they're registered, this is a way to track them down also.
Not much more to add. Kathy covered most of it there. The idea is to make sure we do track the income tax. That's one important aspect. And having sat here for many years, as you guys have, about every 3 or 4 years you have a horror story of some contractor showing up, blotching it, just messing up a job and then disappearing. And the hope is that we can track that a little bit better, at least so they can, if they're not operating properly, they're not operating the city.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. Since I have not been able to sink my teeth into the whole contract as yet, but is there exemptions to, for instance, like age groups, like maybe teenagers or people, certain groups that are perhaps exempt from this, or if you make under a certain amount, or is there?
It's not by amount, but we did by age.
By age.
Actually, if you're under 18, you don't have to pay city income tax anyway. We refund that. It's a one-page form, but they wouldn't be required to. That was an issue, and a valid issue is that, high school kids trying to make money in the summer, mowing lawns, shouldn't have to get bonds and things like that.
Shoveling snow.
Yeah, shoveling snow, there you go. We're talking about people that come into town with a pickup truck and a trailer and a tractor, and, they're going around making a lot of money, but they're not, bonded, don't have insurance and things like that.
So is someone who's doing this part-time as well? For instance, if someone's just doing a little roofing on the side and this is something that would be required in a
They really should. This is a registration process. We're not out there checking their work. It's just to register, and yes, if they're making a certain amount of money within the city, they should be paying taxes, and they should be held accountable if there are issues with their work. There are a lot of people out there who are doing everything right, who they're competing with, and it just levels the playing field. It's a matter of fairness for everyone, I think.
Sure, and I'm just trying to ask questions that I can imagine some of the constituents or people on my board might ask or might be curious about.
I would like to have a public meeting on March 8th to go more in detail with the application itself, the application packet, and the ordinance, and then have open it to questions from people.
Somebody else?
No?
Oh. What's the penalty if you don't do this? What if somebody is found?
It's in there.
It's in here.
I was wondering.
Kathy Heck will come get you.
Kathy Heck will come get you.
11, 10,
That
11.
price is too high.
Failure to register with the City of Athens will result in a minimum fine of $500 per project, not to exceed $1,000 per licensed year.
That's really only $1,000, is that what you're saying?
So there will be.
You mentioned a leveled playing field, and I just wanted to say that this current discussion was started several years ago by a contractor who made that exact same argument. He wanted the playing field to be level for all people who were working in services within the city, because he had been doing it right all this time, and other people were just flying in and flying back out.
I remember a number of years ago, though, when something similar to this was brought up, and Member Bain made a comment that stuck in my mind. What would allow or keep from happening a man and his brother-in-law from building a garage that is fully capable of doing it on their own property? You remember that one, Nancy?
I don't claim parentage at all.
Well, I'm laying it at your feet, honey.
But there you're not necessarily working with a contractor. You're self-contracting. That's a whole different ballgame.
Okay.
It's just like if you mow your own lawn, even if, so. But,
I have a couple concerns, and one is sort of was alluded to by Kent, and that's someone that does a very small amount of work in the city would have to go through a lot of hassle and a bit of expense. Guy with a pickup truck and a hammer, I've heard the mayor say before, that does small odd jobs once in a while just to supplement their income. I don't think that this should apply to them, and I don't know if there would be. It'd make it more difficult to enforce if you had an income limit or the size of the job type of limit. But for me, it's a sticking point.
okay. Mayor Watt?
I think the cutoff for paying income tax is working 12 days in a year. So anybody even working part-time would exceed that. And again, if we're talking about, you know the budget as well as I do. You know the services we provide. We could always say, yes, anybody working part-time doesn't have to pay, but that means everybody else is paying for them. Again, I think the cutoff is 12 days a year, and 18 or under is an adequate one. This has been around for a few years. I think the example Bill brought up of a guy and his brother working on something, really no money is changing hands. I know technically, probably income tax-wise, that is actually a valid change of goods. I'm not sure about that because I've never done it. At the same time, 4 or 5 years ago when this was first brought up, I started, and I was in city council, first ward there, I started asking everybody I saw, working on houses, painting on houses, doing porches, what they thought about it. And for the most part, most people were for it because it did, create a standard of some kind, and that they'd have at least an idea of what other people are, not so much qualifications, but at least that they were playing by the rules. And that was, as Jim mentioned, the fact is if you're putting out a bid for something and you don't have to pay workers' comp and you're not paying income tax, you can undercut everybody, and then it's a race to the bottom.
I understand the level playing field aspect of it, and as much income tax as we can get into the city, the better. But a person that works full-time at a different job and once in a while has expertise in a certain field, and once in a while does an odd job. I don't think they should have to register with the city before they're permitted to do that work in the city.
How odd is an odd job? 2 days a day, 2 days a week, 2 hours a week?
It's an open question.
At 10 hours a week, at $20 an hour?
But by this regulation, it would be a single hour in a year, if I'm correct.
I guess. I don't know. I think, again, it falls into the income tax level. They can always get their income tax back if they're working under 12 days a year. Right?
Still, the 12-day rule still applies.
Yes.
I would also question when, which may be something that the law director may look into, is where is if they're required to be bonded or insured? I mean, if they're working a certain number of days, doing a certain number of odd jobs, should they be really bonded and insured? And if they're not, then are they, if they're doing plumbing for their friends, should they have a plumbing? If it's just going and fixing faucets for the lady down the street, that's different. But if they're going around making money doing the odd jobs of, like, I'm a plumber, then, that's a question right there because they're not necessarily licensed, and that's an issue.
Continuing on, I agree with Allahu a little bit. I'd like to see some look at at least the fee. I think 100 is a bit steep, one size fits all, and so maybe.
Okay.
I
That
don't know
would
where
be a
it
way
came.
of
Yeah, I don't know
balancing
where it
this.
came from either. $100. It doesn't seem like a lot of money to me, but I think there are people who are working summers only who it is a lot of money to.
So maybe have a sliding fee that would help address some of this.
Not too complicated. Yeah,
Right.
something very.
Right.
Those are absolutely, I didn't pick that amount, but things that council can question. And what's not in the two ordinances is the packet which was put in your boxes. And that lists, actually the ordinance lists too, you can look at the type of work. It lists right on in the packet the businesses that we would want to register. As I said, we're already registering plumbers and electricians and have been for years. And there's a reason for that. The ones that are doing that good job in reporting and carrying insurance. It's a complaint-based issue. The city doesn't have the manpower to run around and ask everybody, who's mowing their lawn if they're registered. But I think you'll find, as Member Sands said, that other people out there working and paying for licenses and insurance know who's doing it right and who isn't. And as you said, registration fees, I don't have strong feelings about any of that. Something else to keep in mind is the information that we use is being done in many, many, many other cities, and often much more strictly than what we're proposing.
Chris, a former auditor that I used to talk to a lot when I was the treasurer of the city used to complain about the large projects that OU would be building, the Bentley Hall rebuilds. And she used to say that the only way they'd find that somebody that would be doing large HVAC installations is to drive down there and look at what trucks are on the site, and then try to find out which of these contractors should be paying income tax to the city. When you look at a Baker's Center that was what, 50, 60 million?
64.
$64 million. I don't know how much we got from that, but I think it's a good idea to make sure that we really do start capturing this without the auditor's office having to show up on a parking lot and take down truck names and license numbers. I don't know how much we got from Holzer when how many million, Paul? 40 million, 30 million?
I don't know.
But I do know that Kathy and I drove down there one day and drove around just looking at the names on the trucks, trying to figure out who's here, and who are we getting income tax revenue from.
It's not in this, but we do have sort of a certificate or card type of thing that we would give people who register so that they could be asked, are you registered with the city? They could produce this so that we would know, and anybody would know, whether it's their contractor, their subcontracting, or the people they're working for, or someone can ask, are you registered? And they would have something to show you for that.
Well, I just wanted to speak to the protection.
Oh, well, that was you and I, not Kathy and I, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I apologize. It was Paula and I that made that ride down to Holzer one day doing that.
I wanted to just emphasize the protection of the citizens part of this. I hear you talking about the dollar amount, but for example, my mother-in-law lives on the Far East End, and she is preyed upon, literally. Anytime there's snow, people show up, and it's like, shovel your drive for $10, even if it's a dusting and what have you. So I think it's important that they have the protection and know that at least they've gone through this process, they're registered with the city, so they have recourse when something goes awry. So I just want to throw that in there.
Mayor Weil, you had something else?
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, I think that maybe what we can do is look more closely at the small contractor issue and see how we can deal with that issue before Monday. And March 8th. Before March 8th. And then we can discuss it further in detail on March 8th and hear comment from people on that date, and then move forward with this. So does that sound okay?
Well, now, can I add one more anecdote since Paula brought that up? Is I have a friend whose father, and you probably read this in the paper, had been paying people who knocked on his door, an older man, to shovel snow, and they came a couple times and he paid him, and then they tried to rob him. Oh. And it was in the paper, and so it really would be nice for people in those situations to say, well, are you registered with the city? Mm-hmm. And it'd be a protection for a senior citizen living by themselves.
That's a good point.
Great. Any more questions about this? Great. Okay. The second item is is Title 41, and this is a recommendation from the Planning Commission that came in last year, and it kind of, through all the different budget items, kind of was put on the back burner. And basically what this was Title 41, which is the site plan review process. After a year, we reviewed it and got together with a committee of people from the Planning Commission, the Planner's Office, the Planner, and John Paskey, the Building Enforcement Director, myself, and several developers. Wendy was there, and we went and said what's working and what's not working, and how can we improve the process. And what we came up with and what's gone through the Planning Commission is some revision to the Title 41. And basically there was actually very little revision that needed to be done. Some of it was doing new definitions, some housekeeping of letters and number order. And I think the most specific change is exemptions from when you have to go through the site plan review, and putting into print the fact that you do a preliminary review meeting with the service safety director or his or her designee, which has been happening all along, and we wanted to be able to put that into the process so that further down the way it would be known by other planning directors and such. The biggest change is probably the exemption that was included for 3-unit residential buildings that were located in R3s, but did not abut R1s or R2s, do not require a variance. Are now exempt from the site plan review. That does not mean that they're exempt from all the other reviews that go on through the city. That means that they just don't have to go through this specific Title 41 plan review. I have sent around the site plan review ordinance and its changes. Any questions? Nancy?
Does the preliminary review precede the request for a building permit?
Yes.
Okay, and is there a paper trail that's a public document that comes from that?
The plan was that John Paskey and Paul Logue have been developing checklists and such for that.
And that would be a public record?
I would expect so. In everything we do,
That's the main
short of
question.
tax documents.
Okay. All right, so then if a neighbor wants to go in and take a look, that neighbor would be able to do it, right? As a preliminary review? You know, somebody who's affected? I mean, otherwise you probably wouldn't know.
Right.
If everything was, okay, just want to make sure. The other thing is I guess I'll go back to, and go into the Wayback Machine and say, one of the reasons why the 3-unit structure was included in the site plan review process is because almost all of the changes on Mill Street and Stewart Street and so on are in those structures. And I think that the planner, Pogemeyer, and especially the environmental people said they were surprised at the intensity of the land use in that area. And so it was kind of an offshoot of that process early on. And so I guess if there's a strong reason to not do it, I guess the reason would be all of the areas totally developed into these 3-story, 15 people, which means 60 people per acre units. And that's what it comes down to, because they're 12 and 15 people in most of those buildings.
Right. But I mean, this review was never established to look at density per se. I mean, that's a whole different issue, and that's something that the code doesn't really address very well at all.
And I'd really like to see that happen, but it's not happening. But the problem is, I think that there are some serious questions with the kind of development that has gone on, not under this administration, but maybe previously before Title 41.
Right. But
call me a crank, but I just wonder if that's the way.
Right. One problem is, I mean, we don't, as a city, we don't have any design standards.
I'm not even talking about taste. I'm just talking safety.
Right.
That was the issue I was going to bring up, was safety. I just
Yeah.
think some of these designs don't appear to the novice driving on the street to be very safe.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, where was the pressure to eliminate those? Who put the pressure in? I guess, that's the question I would have.
Well, I think one of the things is that it was also that it has to be fully within an R3 and not abut an R1 or an R2 zone.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, but I mean, where did the pressure come from for this? I just want, I guess I'd like to know, because it seemed that initially, and I sat through those committee meetings early on, and I don't want to go back, so I'm glad you did it this time. But having said that, I just think from my daily treks down Stewart and Palmer and Mill Street to go to work. I mean, I think there's and I know you say that's not a density problem, but I do think that some recognition of how exactly the code is being interpreted, maybe not in this administration, but maybe in future administrations. The one that comes to mind is the one that says, if there's a piece of pipe that goes down to the ground, you can have parking underneath it, and it's sort of like a flying buttress or something. And it was a really curious read on the code that was done by one of our.
But I mean, this.
And I think that would rein it in. Let's say that would cast the light of day onto that kind of crazy interpretation.
Right, but this site plan review. I mean, because we have our code is fairly limited to what those sort of things say and do, and I think that looking at those sort of things, you need a building department to really,
I agree, but I think that, just giving carte blanche because we can't enforce it right now doesn't mean,
Right.
I'm not in favor of reducing that requirement. I think that it might have been somebody's specific interest, but maybe they're all developed, okay, but I wonder what it means in the long-term development of the city. And aesthetics, notwithstanding, no question, because they aren't.
Okay. Does anybody have?
I think we'll get clarification for you, Nancy, on the 3-unit exemption. It does not mean that 60 people can be in a unit and it's exempt.
I just, I'm going back to the discussions I had with, and I can't remember the name of the woman who was the engineer. But, you have 5 units, 5 bedrooms, and 3 times 15, that's what it comes out to be, or 3 times 4 is 12. And then you're talking about either 4, and they're on an eighth of an acre lot. They're on lots that are 25 to 35 by 100 feet deep. I mean, and they have virtually no space for anything. I mean, I think it may be desirable to have a building department, but I wish it would stop.
Yes, I will.
Realize, of course, that the comprehensive plan talked about an R4 zone, even more intense. The limitation most of the time in building, whether it's 3-unit and going through site review one way or the other, is usually parking. And you can see where understand I have trouble when you have a post out there and it's not considered lot coverage. But again, usually what's going to limit the intensity of this area is the paving and how many parking spaces you can put in, which will fall into any building plan regardless of whether it goes into site plan review 41 or not, Title 41 or not.
I just think the light of day doesn't hurt this stuff. I guess that's where I'm coming from.
I'm
especially
aware of that
on this
too,
one.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
that's-
especially since it won't always be the same group of people doing it, and I think that the citizens, and especially the people who live in these places who don't really know what the options are, who don't have a place to sit down or throw a frisbee or do anything, even to put the snow, if they shovel their sidewalk. I guess.
Parking place.
Yeah, not a place to put a garbage can. I mean, that's one of the, if there's no other reason that we should do this, it is to find, there are so many places that don't even have a spot for a garbage can, they're so overdeveloped.
Actually, I think that's something that we should look at in code in general, just making sure we have adequate garbage locations and containment. I think we've discussed this before, I know, but there's nothing in code saying that you require so many square feet of garbage can.
Yeah, and it would just seem
Dumpsters.
self-evident, wouldn't it?
What?
It seems self-evident, wouldn't it?
Most people don't think in terms of
I
that.
know. It's a parking place or another bedroom I can put in as opposed to the dumpster. And I think we, at a certain point, have to protect them from themselves, protect the city's interests.
Right. Well, I think one thing that comes up also is the amount of lot coverage. And this, once again, our code has a difficult time with lot coverage and definitions and such. And that's something that the site plan review was never meant to look at or to address. I mean, I think that people thought of the site plan review as kind of a answer to all the problems that we've had, and it's not. It's a sunshine mechanism to a large degree.
Yeah.
It's also a mechanism to ensure that developers go through and talk to people. And I know that the site plan review was very much appreciated by many of the city departments because it helped to coordinate all their work and all that sort of stuff. So that makes it much better planning, but it's not the end all of doing good, proper planning within Athens, and then it needs to be addressed in other ways.
And I'll go back and reinforce what I said earlier. I was exactly what I was talking about, sunshine.
Right.
Letting people around know what's going on so it's not a huge surprise. So I would like to not change that 3 people one until we have more experience. But I may be alone.
Okay.
Just historically, Title 41 was brought up in response to some of the developments that were being designed to skirt this requirement of PUD to come before council. Is that correct?
I think that's partially
some degree.
correct, and then just the sort of really well, the mayor can also talk too, because he was there, and Jim, but I think there was some concern about safety, and other people's property rights, and in general, just the way the city looked, and it just litter and everything else. I mean, the big ones were there, sure, but...
Also infrastructure. There have been a couple of cases where they were building something, realized, well, where they think the pipes are going or not where the pipes are going. So really was an oversight in terms of making sure you have infrastructure that matches what they're trying to put down in that lot.
Right.
I mean, they may think there's a stormwater, and again, in terms of lot coverage, eventually we'll be looking at stormwater management somewhere down in the future, which would cover lot coverage. But the fact is that somebody would say, okay, let's build this here, and the pipes go that way, and they start doing it and realize the street crew or the water crew or the sewer crew comes along and says, the pipes are on this side of the lot, not that side, so it's oversight. Usually the larger structures have a better handle on that. It can follow, the idea is, again, a review of all the possibilities,
Right.
which is why it has a checklist.
Yes. A review and coordination, I think, is the best way to talk about this Title 41.
And sunshine, too.
And sunshine, I think is important. So, any other concerns? I would appreciate if we can have a discussion with John and Paul about the 3-unit. And I would like some input on that, people's idea, how to address that, if people have concerns more after you review this again.
But it's ultimately a legislative question, right? I mean, it's really a political question down to it.
Well, I mean, I know once you get past a certain number of units, a whole new permitting system comes in from the state. And so there's this gray area. And this was discussed at the meetings, is this gray area. And, people were concerned that if we were, too restrictive, that would cause excessive, then you have other, that it really can kind of skirt the laws. Sorry, not skirt the laws, but kind of skirt the intent of, so, Jim?
Title 41, again, isn't a restriction, it's simply a checklist.
Right, it's a review process.
A review process.
I mean, and it says...
And I'll go with Nancy, that I would like not to have anybody who could be affected by this excused. And safety would be my sticking point. That should be at least part of the discussion. That's all.
Okay.
And it won't always be the same people, so you have to make it foolproof. I mean, I think that's the one thing about statutory government. Over 10 years, and simple and without a doubt, easy to manage.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Penalties.
Okay, well, I think that this merits more discussion, so I will not bring this up on Monday. Any other comments on that particular? Okay. Another item is the sign regulations. This is more of a kind of housekeeping as per request from the mayor. It has said in our code, our zoning code, that we have a penalty for violation of the ordinance of the zoning code 230313, which is the sign, all the sign ordinance such. And we have never really put in what the fine should be. So I'm proposing and the mayor has proposed that we put in 2303.13U penalty, minor misdemeanors, $100 per occurrence. Each day violation constitutes a separate offense. So it's basically each day $100 for a violation of 2303.13. So.
I think this was actually brought forward by the Director of Code Enforcement. I sent him out to look at some temporary signs that were flying around the city, and it says on that particular section of code saying the code will fine and penalty will be determined by council.
Right. And then
That's where we realized it didn't happen. So I think we picked that number as a good working number since it's elsewhere. I see
And
Pat.
just as that, and then as a minor issue, and I don't have the code language in front of me right now, but I think the language about every day being a separate offense is already in there, so that may just be some surplus language that we don't have to add.
Right, it does. It says, and continue shall constitute a separate offense. So it's just putting in the monetary value. So I will bring that up on Monday unless I hear any concerns or...
Can you tell me exactly what kind of signs that would cover?
Would you like to read all the signs?
Well, the one I'm wondering about is a call I got about 2 weeks ago saying, do we really have to allow all the rental signs on all the rental houses?
We don't have time.
Signs are difficult. I know that
take
the
it not
Planning
that.
Commission has been working on this very issues about signs and rental signs and what constitutes a rental sign. And they have a committee for it, don't they?
Okay.
Actually, we had a task force put together last year. They looked at sandwich signs on Court Street. They looked at the other ones, real estate signs, and then they looked at the rental signs. It never finished, got done. It never really not everything got cleared through the Planning Commission at this point. The sandwich signs are pretty much knocked down on Court Street because the Disabilities Commission recommended against it. The real estate signs, the approval, which you haven't seen so far, recommendation was to enlarge them up to 6.2 feet, I believe, where right now they're allowed to be 5. So in other words, and if you look at most signs right now, real estate signs, they are probably out of compliance, and they could probably be in violation right now since there's no law passed. The rental signs and nameplate signs have not been addressed. There has been at least 2 or 3 meetings about that. We have not come to a conclusion on that. So that's where we are. There are people who ask the questions. The signs we're talking about here in particular, there are a couple of signs where there were giant pieces of plywood with a snow removal sign and a telephone number stuck in a bank of snow. And it's like, okay, who put that permit there for that sign? Little things like that. We have a series of temporary signs that show up every once in a while.
Giant banners on the side of apartment complex now leasing.
That's a good question. I think that's actually allowed if you get a permit.
Well,
I think you can cover 30% of your side of your building, I think, with setback requirements.
But it's the permit part also.
Yes, the permit part is...
So, one thing that I have seen occur more and more, the beginning, especially with the quarters, are these signs on the side of rental houses about some textbook. Rent your textbook. And there are these big signs, that I'm sure students are putting up. I don't know if they realize that they may need to get a permit for that. But if you go down Stewart and Palmer and in that area, those are proliferating to a degree.
So we're not talking about car wash signs, yard sale signs, that sort of thing.
Those, I think that ones that people put up for the weekend, those are exempt from needing a permit. So.
Unless they've been placed in your right-of-way, and then we will take them up. So,
Provided we know where the right-of-way is, right?
You have a good idea. If not, we'll take it to council to see if they want to get a revocable use of the right-of-way for 10 years.
Okay, 10 years.
Put
their lawn sign up.
eligible for renewal.
Every 10 years.
So if there's any other discussion, no, then I'll bring that up on Monday also. The last thing that I have under miscellaneous is a revocable lease request for a right-of-way, a revocable license request. This is for 483 and 483 and a half Richland Avenue, which actually is known as the Patrick Lang House.
Former house.
Former house. Basically, from what I understand, the revocable license hasn't run out on this, but the property has changed ownership, and they would like to have the revocable license issued in the new name. They have put in a request, and it has been passed through all the required signatures and departments, and I will bring that up on Monday, too.
Otherwise
Any
known
other-
as the childhood home of Patrick Clark.
Should put a sign on it.
Yeah. Brad
Only
Clark.
if you have
Is that everything, Chris?
Yes, it is.
On to the Safety Committee, Committee Chair, Sherry, I'm sorry. Sherry Coon.
Thank you, President Bynes. I wanted to mention carbon monoxide detectors tonight, specifically requiring them in all rental units. It had been my intention to have Chief Troxel here tonight to talk about them. However, Chief Troxel is on vacation right now. However, he did give me some information. He's been a proponent of carbon monoxide detectors for many years, he said. And he said they should be UL approved, should have a digital readout, AC with battery backup, installed near sleeping areas, the same level, hallways, etc. And he's very much against lithium detectors. I have talked to one landlord.
Lithium detector?
Or lithium
Batteries?
batteries,
Okay.
yes. I have talked to one landlord who totally supports, requiring carbon monoxide detectors in all rentals. He was extremely supportive and was out of town tonight also, but is willing to come to council and speak about them. And we will be inviting landlords to come and speak to us. But wanted to get started tonight to get it on everyone's minds so that we can think about requiring carbon monoxide detectors in all rentals.
Effective the 1st of September, right?
Yes, that would be good when the students are
next
back.
year.
Yes, that's a good idea.
And in this case, as opposed to smoke detectors, having a plug-in is not going to be a problem.
Okay.
Because the reason why the smoke detectors are because of electrical fires, but in this case, it's to detect the carbon monoxide. I also think we need to add garages, drive-in garages, because they're as bad as, or maybe worse than furnaces. But
Well, that's interesting.
there have been some of those where people accidentally left the car in. Maybe on purpose. I don't know.
Hopefully not on purpose, but
Hopefully not on purpose.
so that we'll be discussing that more at a later time.
I did put them in the house I own next door to me, and it's about between $50 and $60 for each one. It's not very expensive.
They've come down tremendously in price and in reliability also. They're much better.
And when you consider the price of a life, I mean that's nothing.
Or brain damage or something.
Right, or brain damage. And apparently that stays in your blood for a long time. My son-in-law had an episode in a parking lot because there were so many vehicles running, and like 3 days later that was still in his blood. So it's an extremely dangerous thing. Elahu?
And yeah, I bought one for my house to have one just to be safe, but also to test it out and see how they work. And they're not that expensive. I just looked at the Ohio news today, and just for some recent carbon monoxide poisonings, and it does happen. February 7th, there was a family that was very close to death in New Manchester. A few days later, on February 12th, this is the date that the articles were published. In Harrison Township near Dayton, there was another case where 3 children and their mother were very sick, and the children were actually unconscious. And just today, there was an article out of Columbus where 11 people in a business had poisoning. So it's something that happens, and this is a proactive way we can protect the residents of Athens.
Well, a few years ago, we had an episode down on East 8th Street, a business, and people were very ill and took a while to figure out what was going on.
So maybe we want to look at certain businesses having them required as well, and any hotel or type of place where people would be sleeping, where there could be a source of carbon monoxide.
I
A
have
lot of
one-
details for us to work out, I guess.
Yes, right.
We probably won't make it first of September.
Maybe we could do it in stages, perhaps.
I think having having to find 5,000 carbon monoxide detectors could be a problem too, when you think about it, or more. You know, just the whole.
Oh, I bet if they knew they were coming.
Yeah, I know.
they'd be here.
It'll be about 1 year until we have to do all the lithium batteries and the smoke detectors. That's another.
Yeah. Just another anecdotal story. When I went to my 10th year reunion, someone I graduated with and his wife were both killed because of a malfunctioning furnace and carbon monoxide poisoning. So.
Well, I have one in my home, but since I've talked to Chief Troxel, I realize I have it in the wrong place. I have it in the basement by the furnace, and apparently you need to have them near your sleeping area, or maybe both. I'm not
Because
sure.
if you unplug it, it just screams.
So,
That's what.
yes.
I assume that this is just for gas-heated houses, because they're electric, but
Wouldn't
don't have any
have-
problem?
That's a good point, right?
Okay, and I assume that you're talking about effective the end this September,
We
or?
probably can't do it.
Okay.
Well, maybe if we just
I'm
did
just
it
asking.
in rentals, then that might be possible.
See what other legislation is out there at other communities, and
Debbie does.
maybe we can pull it together pretty quickly.
That would
Maybe
be
not,
really
but,
good.
let's see.
Give it a shot.
Yeah.
Sure. I would caution only being for electric or for being gas-fired, because if you look at a lot of the articles, a lot of them have either to do with somebody who brought in like a kerosene heater, especially when it's really, really cold, and
Well, that's
people
true.
who have electric tend to do that because it gets so cold, and those don't necessarily.
And
Well, they don't-
and generators.
Yeah. So I think,
Electric is out.
Yeah.
in cars, the garage may be not very well vented, or I think that it's not just heaters. It's not just a
That's a good
furnace. So
My garage is in my basement, so.
Fireplaces.
fireplaces, wood stoves,
All of the above.
water heaters.
So you're talking about multiple carbon monoxide monitors in the house?
Starting with one by each home.
Right, I think we should start with one.
Are there units that are actually smoke detectors / carbon monoxide testers?
There,
detectors?
I mean,
There
at
are.
Lowe's there is. So
Okay, I don't know, I mean, I just wondered, I haven't really studied it. Okay.
I'd
With
say
our
one on
10-year
the, I'm sorry, one on the bedroom level, whatever level of the home the bedrooms are on.
Yeah, I was going to say, Massachusetts passed a statewide requirement, and so that's something that we can look at and see what parts of that would work. They do make ones that are both smoke and carbon monoxide, but that would conflict with our 10-year smoke detector requirement. Or it would be in addition, I guess, extra bonus for those homes.
Well, this is asking for AC and battery backup, so you don't want a 10-year lithium battery, that's what I'm hearing is...
That's right. He was
Why is
again
that?
very well. We'll have to have him explain that.
Okay.
But
I don't know.
He was
I'm not-
very much against lithium.
Well, I don't know, maybe it's because of the last time when we did the smoke detectors, but I'm not sure about the battery backup, if that's even available.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's something that needs to be explored before we get, I mean, having one that plugs in would be good, even at a minimum. I mean, how many times is the power out? Well, it would be a problem, but I don't
Well,
know.
mine was out a couple of weeks ago.
I know, that's what I
Well-
say. It could be a problem, but can we even
Right.
get such a device?
I'd like to see some code, because it's when the power goes out that you have combustion problems with some furnaces. I know ours just did that with we had a brownout, so our furnace was still running, but our fan, that we have a forced exhaust, wasn't.
It's not.
And I was
Some of the
feeling-
new ones are really problematic.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I would definitely look at whether it needs to have a battery.
And those are available with battery backup, that's what mine has.
At Lowe's?
local stores, yeah.
I just walked by, I didn't remember if it had a battery back or not. My home away from home.
And then under miscellaneous, I just wanted to give a brief report on...
Okay, I was ready to go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
You can go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Just wanted to give a brief report on the proposed stage amplified sound ordinance that had been requested by the police department. And I'm passing out some of the proposed ordinance. There are 3 proposed ordinances.
For you?
There, I have one. Okay. I can pass them all out. We had a meeting, the ad hoc committee had a meeting on February 12th, and 3 items came out of that meeting. One was that stages not be permitted in residential zones. Number 2, music/bands, that no amplified live bands or DJs outside or inside, with the intention that sound can be heard outside of the building in residential zones. Non-amplified music, as acoustical guitars, that's okay, except from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and from 12 a.m. to 7 a.m. Friday and Saturday. And that could be subject of a citizen complaint at other times. And there would be exceptions for governmental entities. 3, that person shouldn't be allowed on roofs. And so there are 3 draft ordinances. However, I did receive an email from John Paskey that the Planning Commission had concerns about prohibiting stages in residential zones, and thought instead it could be listed where stages are allowed instead of where they're prohibited. So if council could review those proposed ordinances and get back with me so that I can pass your input along to the Chief Mayor, that would be appreciated. Yes, it has. So does anybody have anything?
Well, I guess I'm going to state my concern right now, and then everybody can jump all over me. One of the things that I always hear from my constituents is how much they'd like to see the noise ordinance enforced more than it is. And so I just wonder about the roof thing here, having been down there several times during the heat of it, not nearly as much as the mayor or service director, but having been down in ground zero. And I wonder if keeping people off the roof is something that can even be done at the worst of times. And secondly, if we need a trigger. Because people are on the roof all of the time during spring quarter, and they could be called recklessly on the roof, I guess. But, because they're sometimes silly. They don't, there's a fall asleep and there's a slope. But I don't know, as a person who has a rental property, my average age of my tenants is about 45, so I don't have to worry about it. But, if I did have a property that was in this type of thing, I would say you can't have a Halloween party and you can't be on the roof. And if you do something to destroy my roof, then you're going to pay for it. I do think it's more of a individual thing than a larger issue. Noise affects a very large area. And I know you can say it's safety, and so that's why I'd like to see a trigger if you're going to do this at all. And I don't know that I'm necessarily even for it, but at some point when times are bad. If we have only 3 police officers on duty most times, is this what we want them to be doing? Keeping people off of roofs. It's sort of like making things damn foolproof. I don't know if you can do it. But anyway, that's just my position on it, and I have told Sherry that repeatedly. I don't think, and I know it's only a small number of people that want it, and there's some of the people who have properties down there, and they don't want to have to deal with it. So they make the city, the police, be the bad guys. And I don't think it's necessary.
Member Butler?
Thank you. I would agree wholeheartedly with Member Bain on this issue. I just spoke earlier today with a writer from the Post who had mentioned to me on the phone that Student Senate was going to be looking at these very issues this evening, and wanted to know if I had any thoughts or comments, and I shared the exact observations there that Member Bain did. How do you ask a police officer to get someone down off of a roof, especially if there happen to be right, especially if there happen to be a number of them, and if intoxication is part of the process. I think that our police force is probably better suited to challenge and tackle other more relevant or pertinent issues. I just don't think they need to be busied with that, and I think that its enforcement would be really, really difficult. So I wholeheartedly agree with Member Bain on that issue, and I think at what point, too, is just good judgment come into play when we're dealing with these issues, and whether or not it needs to be on the books as a law or the challenges that go along with enforcement. So I do agree with those observations.
Thank you. I appreciate your input.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to give my 2 cents worth with this also. I think that it's, on one level, it's the landowner's responsibility to ensure that people know safety, general safety. I mean, I was walking down the corner of Palmer and Mill. A landlord, I guess, got tired of people walking out on the roof and put just some railing over the windows. Nothing that would keep people in during a fire, because you'd just be able to, but just, simple wrought iron railing just over the windows to keep people from, I think, off the roof. And so I think that I get concerned the city being, going to this extreme, because I think it would be extraordinarily difficult to enforce. And where, there probably are other mechanisms to look at danger and the, sort of these issues. And where does it stop if we say people can't be on roofs? And, what about overcrowding on front porches? And where do we stop? And where is it responsibility of the people who own the land, live there? And I think that it's just putting another thing on the books that we would have a really hard time enforcing.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mayor?
On the other side, it becomes another tick mark to close down a party as a nuisance party, doesn't it? In other words, you rather than, and I know we're down to, we have 1 or 2 violations, or maybe 4 before we say close it down. This is just another one. So that's the other side of it, too. It's not enforcement, but it is another, as I say, another check saying time to shut the party down. I don't feel one way or the other about it. I think structurally the roads aren't made to be danced on. At the same time, I've been up there on Halloween, and it's it's a slope. You've got gutter out the end that gives you an idea that you could actually hold on to that or actually get support on it. You've got electric lines coming in usually at the 2nd story. It's all courting disaster. I don't know, at this point whether it should be legislative or not, though. Again, this is the task force.
Member Butler?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Weil, too. Along with what Member Bain was saying, too, it is on noise ordinances are on the books, and the complaints that, and I think that the police department is working on this from what I understand, but the complaints from some of the constituents in my neighborhood are that they call early enough in the evening, or they're making efforts to get the police department informed and aware of these issues early on, and with noise ordinances, and had those issues been addressed when the first complaints were fielded, then some of these things might not get out of hand. That's some of the concerns or ideas that have been expressed to me on the west side.
Just a clarification for me. The persons who were on the task force that have been working on this included members from the neighborhood associations?
Yes.
And so were they, in fact, the ones who instigated this development of this? Or?
I believe that it was first brought up by our code enforcement person.
Okay.
It's a safety issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to make a link with our previous discussion about Title 41, maybe they wouldn't be on the roofs if there was a place for them to be on the ground. I mean, we have just and I'm not...
Or Palmer Fest wouldn't be in the middle of the street if
if there was enough
still
space.
backyards.
There's a backyard.
Yeah, there are no backyards. They're parking lots. They want to be standing on their cars.
Yes, Member Stevens.
Several years ago, I think several of us, but I know I received a communication from a landlord who said, why didn't City Council pass legislation against people being on roofs? And I passed it on to the police department I said, why not? And it came back that the police department didn't want that responsibility either. They said if landlords should put it in their lease and enforce it.
And when was that?
It was at least 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Probably the same person that got this started again.
Yeah.
And I still agree with that issue, that what everybody has said, that the difficulty of enforcement in this particular space, how do you do that? And how do landlords do it? I don't know, but they do it by penalties of one kind or another.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I actually wanted to comment on the third item, which was the outdoor performances section. It talks about no amplified use, production, or presentation. Let's see. It says for anything intended directly or indirectly to be heard outside of the structure. So if someone was playing music in their backyard, anywhere in town, would that be a violation of this?
Well, this isn't about anywhere in town. This is just about in the residential areas.
Well, okay, so in my neighborhood, I've got speakers on my back porch, actually. If I were playing music at night, strictly interpreted, that would be a violation of this, wouldn't it?
It sounds like it.
Okay. It seems a little overboard, if you ask me, in terms of the requirements there.
What about your neighbors?
In addition, Ohio University, the vast majority bill, we were looking at this, is in a residential zone, and they have outdoor performances all the time. So I think it does need some tweaking.
I'm not talking about violation of the other parts of the noise ordinance, just the fact of playing music on your own property to be heard outside of your home would be against the law if this was in place.
And you should be able to do that till 11 o'clock at night, right?
If it's not in violation of the noise ordinance,
Yeah, that's what I meant.
I don't see why not. Yeah.
Okay.
Your neighbors may not like it.
Well, then the ordinance comes into effect and then
Right. I'm just talking about the old folks.
Mr.
Thank you. Yeah, I might add something else as well, too, is that I was recently informed at a Athens Municipal Arts Commission meeting that prior to my involvement with City Council, that AMAC had looked into this issue as well with performance in the public space and art in the public space. And so they have some guidelines that I can forward via email to council, and I believe the mayor may already have access to it or has seen it perhaps, but that was something that was pointed out to me at the most recent AMAC meeting. Emily Prince at Arts West has a copy of that.
Okay.
So that they tackled this issue and looked at some suggestions or ideas. And I don't know if it was formally presented to council a couple of years back, but it's been looked at. So they may have some suggestions or ideas there as well. Thanks. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Is there another meeting scheduled for this task force?
At this moment, there is not another meeting scheduled, but I have a feeling there probably will be.
Just wondered.
Member Bain, did you have something else for safety?
I'm just getting queued up.
Okay. That's all for Safety Committee then?
On to City Services.
City
Chair Nancy
Services.
Bain.
So I have some comments just to get us thinking about some changes. And they are a bit premature because we don't totally know what's happening. I guess that's always the way it is in this world, but I'm getting philosophical in my old age. So City Services, one of the things we haven't talked about much lately is because our solid waste management thing. We have the uptown garbage arrangement, which seems to be working pretty well and going forward and so on and so forth. But there are some things in the distance that seem to need attention, and so I thought maybe I could tell you a little bit about what I know from my experience, and Mayor probably has some input, and Paula too. Just in general, anybody else, there is sort of a 5-year scenario that we might be working on. I'll start by saying Athens has always been out there on recycling. And some people say that literally, but I mean ahead of the game is what I meant. And so we had SORT, which was Tom O'Grady, Ed Newman, Bob Eichenberg, Donna Goodman, a bunch of very forward-looking people who did recycling collections early, way before it was the law. We used to have a city rec drop-off. We had curbside, and then we had pay-as-you-throw. All of those happened before House Bill 592, which mandates that solid waste districts are going to collect fees and report with paper to EPA, and also the garbage deposited is supposed to pay into permitted landfills is supposed to pay for our recycling, some of our recycling program. Okay, so going on to this, we once were part of another district, now, and we got out of that. And most of the got out of that has to do with the county commissioners, not with the Athens involvement at all. But Athens Hocking Solid Waste District is our current waste district. It collects, it has the lowest possible fees in the state, and it collects about $100,000 a year, plus or minus 150. Or less than that, depending on the time. And that Athens Hocking Solid Waste District is largely governed by commissioners, and then there are committees that also have input. And their obligations are to make a plan, which we're starting into now, to pay office staff, and to promote and provide recycling. And so the commissioners are really the core people on this. And up until now, it seemed like it's going to go on as we've seen it forever. But I'm not sure that's happening because it's changed quite considerably. And this is where I think we have to do due diligence. I happen to be the commissioner's rep on the policy committee, which is supposed to be making the plan. And we kind of, get things and react to them. Our most recent meeting was the 30th of December. And the current funding that we have cannot pay both office people plus do the tasks that are outlined plus pay for the work that goes on. Okay, so that's somebody else's problem in a way, although it will spill over onto us, as I'll mention in a moment. The next part of it is there's an invention also of the commissioners called Athens Hocking Recycling. That's the entity that collects our garbage and provides curbside recycling. They also provide services to the areas surrounding Athens City. You may not know that, but they do have quite an extensive list of people, and so that pay for garbage and get recycling at the curbside. When we were at the meeting, and it was relatively contentious, I would say. I've seen worse, but it was pretty contentious. The mayor said, "Well, I just wrote a check for $1 million," but the overall view was that they are supporting our cheap garbage rates. They don't necessarily get the idea of pay as you throw. And the haulers are pretty much pressuring at least one half of the county group to stop collecting garbage. And as you look forward to the election, you say, it could shift. And we could end up, after 2 years, not having Athens Hocking at the end of our 2-year contract to pick up our garbage and do our recycling. So it seems to me, and we've talked about this a little bit in small committee, but I wanted everyone to know that this is something that might be coming down the pike fairly soon. Of the $1 million the mayor was talking about, we would give about $250,000 for recycling. That's our fees. We all pay $250 a month, and we pass those on. And the other part of the cost of recycling is borne by sale of materials. The materials are in pretty good shape when they come out of the door up there and the vendors come down, but there's still very bad times if you communicate with anybody at all outside this area. Knox County comes to mind for me, which is part of a suburban Columbus district. They can barely get rid of their materials. And we only are making $200,000 per year on our materials. Our usual amount was $500,000. So in other words, the whole apparatus kind of hinged upon prices of materials. And the funds pay salaries and benefits for people who collect our garbage and collect our recycling. So what we need probably fairly soon is a little bit of a boost in one of the fees to help offset the problems that we have with the sale of materials, quite honestly. And the sooner the better as far as I'm concerned. We all pay $250 a month for recycling. And we probably, and some of us have lower garbage bills than others, but if you watch what you throw away, you know, and somebody asked me why so-and-so was so opposed to what was going on, but, you know, if you have a real little bit of garbage, it's because you're doing a lot of recycling. And generally, that recycling, sale of materials, the way we've handled it, has paid for the cost of that. But right now, we're in kind of a bind. And plus, I think we're under pressure politically. And so what I would like to do, as soon as I have a chance to talk to the service director and the mayor and other members of my committee, is propose a small little temporary increase on the recycling or garbage bill to get us over this time period on the sale of materials. It can be temporary or permanent, I don't know. If I were God, I would just put it on the recycling bill. But that's it. And then the second thing is more long-term. We have a residential collection and we have commercial. Commercial is defined as, I can't remember what the definition, I was going to check it and I forgot to. 3 haulers that collect all of the big contracts. We have licenses that expire June 2011. We have very little involvement with that process. We used to have a commercial pickup system. It's gone. I can tell you the history very quickly. We put together the commercial licenses, 5 of them we had. They were supposed to protect private enterprise, and so they were all little operators, Troy Hyatt and the Rice Brothers and different other people like that. And they've all been edged out by what I would describe as the bigger haulers, who we may have to deal with, but it would probably be better to deal with them in a unitary fashion eventually. And so the biggies came in and purchased them. That's why I said to you, I've been at worse meetings than that one on the 30th of December, but it was bad enough. The 2 big ones are Sanitary Commercial Services, which has morphed into Waste Management, Inc., and Rumpke, which is mainly south of the 70 corridor. Okay, so what I think we need to do is getting ready for that 5-year plan. Who knows what it'll be like in 5 years? You know, I guess I can imagine drop-offs. I drive through Licking County and I see drop-off boxes in Granville. I know this isn't Granville Toto, but it could happen here. It's not usually so great because maybe Granville is smaller and able to do it, but we could have potentially, but it's going to take some time, some other form of sorting. Right now we have a system, a structure, a series of structures and a series of different items, not we, but the county does. We've participated in those. We've actually bought 3 or 4 pieces of equipment. We have participated by supporting grants. And so we have maybe a, $200,000, $300,000 industrial facility up there that's been built by 20 years of our involvement. And so if the thing changes, I don't know what part we get. We gave our garbage trucks over when we moved into their system. So what we probably need to do is consider passing an ordinance terminating the existing licenses, and then at our leisure, and that would be for the 30th of June 2011, because that's when they retire. Because if we don't do it now, what will happen is at the time when all of these political things work out, we may not have a hauler, and we may not have any control at all over the commercial licenses. And we really need to have a way to see how those commercial licenses could fit into the residential licenses that we have. If we would maybe divide the city up into zones and contract it out to maybe the same haulers. They may be the only ones that have the capacity to do it. First of all, we require a packer truck, which is beyond the means of many of the people we met on the 30th of December in Nelsonville. And so we don't really know, but I think I was the person that wrote that initial law that started with the licenses, and I do think it's time to terminate it and to have a discussion in late summer once the administration has some clear understanding of where we're going. Maybe we'll certainly have a public discussion of how we want to proceed after the 30th of June 2011. But it seems to me that we have to do it soon. We have to tell the callers. We have to tell Waste Management, Inc., Rumpke, and Farmer that we will not be hauling waste, or their license will expire, and they are really welcome to go ahead and try to participate in it in the future, but it would be a different type of participation. And that's kind of just what I've been seeing over time, having a long involvement. It seems like it was working swell. Ohio University has a 2-year contract as well, I think, that they're working on right now. Of course, they're about a third of what we are in terms of participation. So it's not ready yet, but I thought it was time to just kind of put it out in the open that we need to start at least talking about it. I don't think any of us can see the future well enough to know what's going to be there, and we have to know by the 30th of June where we stand. And I hate to be in this position. I wish I could say it would go on forever the way it's been working. Works fine for me, but I don't know that it will go on forever. And so all options are still open, and I want you to think about this. And remember that the control is in the commissioner. Our commissioners have been really fabulous in supporting us. That would be the Athens County Commissioners. I can't say that I see that same level of support amongst the Hocking County Commissioners. So that's my personal opinion, just having been around a bit and watching. They have different pressures on them. And so we may not have a hauler in 2 years, and we really need to be ready to face it. Do you have anything to add?
I believe I was told from Roger Bale that the EPA has increased their tipping fees $1 or something or other per ton. That's going straight to the state. I think it's the state. And so therefore we can actually expect an increase in our cost of doing garbage. And I know the rates we have right now are staggered pretty much as the bags go up, the numbers go up, and the recycles pretty much flatline. I'm not sure where we want to go. The $1 million you're talking about is actually about $800,000 for
I was just quoting you.
with the refuse, and another about $274 for the recyclables and extra bags, as you know.
And that's been going better with the handheld.
Yes.
Which is next.
And I'm aware of the fact that the policy committee, which has to do the 5-year plan, has to look at the 5-year plan and decide what they want to do, whether they want to act as a dual county waste district, a single county waste district. They also are talking about increasing tipping fees as well as generation fees.
Which we will vote on in a few, and we hope.
That will come up eventually. It has to be approved by council, by the commissioners, by various townships out there. A generation fee is any garbage generated in the county, whether it goes into our landfill or not, gets paid for, because that money gets contributed to the county and the district. Anything tipping goes into the Route 33, I forget the name of the landfill up there, Kilbarger landfill. It's about, right now it's $1.50 in district, $2, $2.50, I forget the numbers actually.
Yeah, $2.50 out of district, and then out of state is $1.50, because they have to be the same.
So
something like that.
And the difference, of course, is who hauls the garbage in at that point to the landfill. The intent, of course, while we're under this, is to decrease the amount of landfill and increase the amount of recyclables. And the idea is to create a policy that will work. And that's a 5-year, every 5 years it's supposed to be reviewed. And the expectation is that there will be changes.
And I think this part is really a very small part, the recycling part, and we also have our own garbage. And I think that up until recently, you could prove it if you just took the numbers and looked at them. But, I will say, and I guess that I have to say it pretty bluntly, they believe firmly that they are supporting us, despite the mayor's protest that he wrote his $1 million check.
We are the biggest generators. As a city, we are the biggest generators.
And we also pay a goodly bit of the cost of running the operation.
Proportional.
And, then the other question is that I think is out there and we all think about, ultimately there may be a split and we'll be just Athens. But the big question is, do we want those jobs to go over to Jackson County, or do we want those 20 jobs to stay here?
It's less than 20 now.
Now I know it's going downhill. So anyway, in a week or two, we'll come back with a proposal, I think, if there are no objections. I think that we need some long-term planning. We need to cost it out to figure out. I don't know that the grants are going to be there that were here.
Used to be that you could get a grant to put in a new crusher or some baler, but not anymore. I mean, there are some grants, but not as many because the grants are going to fund OD&R. You know, the money that the bottlers used to pay in lieu of a deposit. That money used to be parceled out to all the municipalities so they can improve their recycling program. Well, now they're using it for OD&R. And do you see anything in the future that says it's going to get better in the financial area? I don't think so. So I see that, we're going to have to do it probably on our own for the most part, over time, with a careful kind of goal in mind. And so this is what I see in the future. One weekend I was just so nervous that we would be down to drop off again before time passed, or some other version of it, and lose those jobs and lose all of our efforts. I don't think that's acceptable, but send me some feedback. Not in the middle of the night, though. Don't call me then. and Allahu met, and anybody else who, next time we have a meeting, feel free. We'll announce it in advance, and anybody else who wants to come can come. Okay. But it's a kind of scary time, I think, and things will change. But things always change, right? That's about all. I'm going to have another meeting not too long from now about some other things I didn't get to discuss with Paula, like the CMI contract and some other things like that. But we'll be back very quickly. Okay? I'm through. Yeah.
I just wanted to inform council that copies of the MOUs have been provided for you regarding Sandlot and CFI.
Yeah. That's
GASA next to come.
what?
GASA. Great Athens Soccer Association.
Oh, okay. I noticed that you talked about pesticides since you brought it up in the CFI, but not among the ball players. Or did I miss that? I'll have to ask you. I was going to ask you about that, not in public.
What
But I just
pesticides
did.
are you talking about?
But I just
Any.
did.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah.
For a minute, I
Like those CFI people are going to use pesticides.
thought Sandlot kids were chewing tobacco and spitting it out or something. It's like, what are you talking
Well,
about?
it depends, I guess. Not saying that the Sandlot people would, but I just thought, the CFI people? Come on. All right, I'm through.
I was just going to briefly comment in response to what the City Service Safety Director noted, that I do see that Rich included an impact fee of $5 per participant, about $2,000, guessing, for the league. So that was something that we had talked about before as well, too.
Appreciate it. Appreciate that. There it goes right into rec, right?
Yes.
And not
It
into
really
the
just
general
off-
fund somewhere.
That only takes an ordinance.
What?
That only takes an ordinance.
Okay. Anything else?
Nancy, can I ask a quick question? There's nothing that would lead any of us to believe that what we're able to sell recyclables for is going to go up soon.
Well,
Question mark.
I asked Cindy, and she said it is starting up already. I think metals and other things have hit an all-time low, but they've bounced back a little bit. Just like my 503B. Ever so little.
Yeah.
Well, I got a few more years until I have to start cashing it out.
Having been the first city in the state to do curbside
I know.
recycling, the idea of going backwards from that makes me almost physically ill.
Oh, I don't think we have to. I just think we have to be prepared. And that's what we're going to try and do, yeah.
This is not terribly realistic given the current situation, but if I were to spell out my ideal scenario, it would be going even further with recycling, in which it's not as much sorting as necessary at the home or for the person that's using the service. Doing it some type of commingled, which a lot of places have been taking up in recent years. It would take a large investment and quite a bit of time to get that set up, and there's
5 years.
there's some benefits and drawbacks to it as well. But I just wanted to put that out there, that's where I think we should be moving.
There was ever so slight reference to what he says in between. He's got to cost it out, though. And that's the problem, because if you go to counties that have those commingled systems there, and actually the processors have been, the green, yellow boxes at the elementary schools, I mean, that vendor is almost bankrupt. think he's in Chapter 11 protection, or they are, I should say. So it's not the right time, but eventually. I mean, I think you need to cost it out and figure out what it would take. There's your challenge, Oahu.
I think it would take $20,000 to hire a consultant to do that. But.
You know, I don't really know. I think that that sometimes the good old homegrown ideas, I don't know, maybe. I saw the consultant you had and talked to him. He was mighty impressive, but he didn't realize that we already charge people for garbage. Small detail.
Chris had a question.
Yeah, Chris.
Oh, I just noted, I've heard Roger say the same thing about going to a single stream.
Yeah, that would
kind
be
of
in
recycling.
Brown County. There's a Brown County example, but Brown County is much closer to Cincinnati than we are to Columbus. And I guess what you would do if you know, and this is why I'm very skeptical, it's my nature, I can't help it, of what Oahu says about single stream or dual stream or whatever he wants to call it, is I always look where the yellow boxes are, because that will tell you exactly how far it's possible to ship mixed paper in a general way. And now it's, of course, very hard. But you can go to Mount Vernon, and the ability stops, which is about 50 miles outside of Columbus, Lancaster, but they don't go much further south. That's what you'll notice because of the friction of distance. And so that operation is there, and they'll dump it, but and they're using it. But like everything else, it's a very bad time. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm willing to look, and I think we want to go on a field trip to Brown County.
There's also the possibility of a smaller sorting facility that would be local jobs. Something similar to the recycling center that exists now, but it would have to be larger and much more expensive than that facility.
Yeah, and the one thing that I would say, and I didn't really jump up and down about this as I was writing up my notes just before I came, one of the things I keep hearing from people is, well, they don't need benefits, and I'm sorry, but the people that pick up the garbage and sort the recycling need benefits. And don't let anybody say anything different. I mean, because if they don't have benefits, then where's that money going to go? I mean, it certainly won't accrue to savings by the users, but we're being criticized because we pay too much, and especially both the landfill operators and some of the haulers say, well, I don't pay my guys insurance. Well, sorry, but you're wrong. Why should the rest of us pay for that? So that's a given. That's why I'm wondering how Oahu will do on his proposal, because I know how much it could cost. And, we've had this discussion for 4 years, or 3 years, right? So, yeah, off and on. And so I'm willing to listen to anything because it's changing so much. The landscape is tilting. Yeah, did I see your hand up in the air?
The only comment I would make is that my mother lived through the garbage strike in New York City, and she said, you think garbage is not so important? You think these people don't have an important job? You let a week or so go by and see what happens. So it's I don't know. Nobody wants to talk trash, but we're all producing it all the time.
In the middle of the summer too. Sure. Yeah, that's the best time.
Although the last couple of weeks, watching those guys on the slip sliding away, roads running back and forth across the streets, picking up these cans and walking over with them all day long.
Wet up to their knees.
They deserve benefits.
Yeah,
I'm
they
sorry.
deserve benefits.
Well, I'm not sorry. I'm proud of it.
Well, I'm proud we're going to continue that. Okay. Chris, you're on.
Thank you. The Transportation Committee has 4 agenda items tonight, 2 of them dealing with ordinances that we'll be presenting. The first one that will begin next week will be for disposal of 2 mowers, 2 Gravely mowers that may be worth more than $1,000. We'll be using those for trade-ins to purchase some new zero-turn mowers. So just wanted to inform council of that. Second item that will be starting at the ordinance stage will be for the annual renewal of our ODOT bus grant, and this allows the federal monies for the operations of our transit, our bus system. Under miscellaneous, we have been contacted by Nicole Lawler, who is a student at Ohio University, who is coordinating the Earth Day event. It's the initial contact. Mayor Wiles spoken with her several times, and we need to and we need to find out what exactly they're planning. They have said that there'll be music, food, and local vendors. In the past, Debbie Walker has found the ordinances, and we have had a street ordinance for a street closing in 2005 and 2006. We'll find out more from them and whether or not they're going to need the street closing. And
What street?
typically, it's been on Union.
In front of Old
Between
Baker
Court
Center.
and College.
2005, 2006, that's when they did it.
Remodeling it.
And remember, it's usually like April 22nd, Earth Day, and festivities where they usually don't tie up the entire street, if I remember, but most of the time they do. They put electric cars out, demonstrations of sustainability.
Yes, that's the Sustainability Committee and the Office of Off-Campus Living who are running it this year. So we'll be hearing more from them. Councilmember Gosney.
I spoke with a couple of the community assistants that are helping with the planning, and they said their concept for this part of it is to make it a real community and university event, so that families, a lot of families could show up and feel welcome and have activities for children, and you mentioned music and vendors and that sort of thing. So it sounds like they're really trying to make it a City of Athens event, not just a university event for this year.
We could close it and get the street repaired at the same time. There you go. Or get the street repaired, close it, and then not have any vehicles on it. And
Have the kids put the bricks in? Is that
Yeah, they could all stamp down under.
It might work well.
Right.
The last item, but not least, Mayor Wall has some information to present for us for a contract for the intercity bus system.
Okay, yeah. Essentially, this is the system that goes between Athens, Columbus, Athens, and Cincinnati. If you remember, the discussion was having somebody to administer it. We've had further conversations with ODOT about this. One of the mechanisms to actually for a grant designee agreement, and this would be somebody who would administer it, because it'd probably be about over $25,000, I suspect, as a granting agency, or rather a process. We would need to put that out to bid, and I'd like to get that rolling as soon as possible. Part of the thing, again, this is part of trying to get this. I think we've got an extension for Lakefront till May at the latest. We'd like to get this agency, at least somebody starting the paperwork sometime by the end of March. So it doesn't give us a lot of time. We still are working on the RFP on this, just to make sure that we're covered for the bus service. But this is another aspect I did not take into consideration at the time. And since we are a little worried about adding staffing, this is the easy way to go. But I do need authorization.
So that would be an additional ordinance.
And it is stimulus funded, so that's part of this hurry-up process.
And we've talked about it before, so you can suspend, I think,
Okay.
without any trouble.
Okay. All right. Are there any, Councilmember Fall?
Speaking of stimulus, is there some way that we can get a tally of how much stimulus money we've gotten? And just general impact? I think people would be very interested in
All the projects.
the projects. And
Project update. I'm supposed to do those when I come, but I was late.
yes, but just, this is the 1-year anniversary of the stimulus, and I think it would be very interesting.
And how many ordinances have been suspended to allow us people to
take all that money.
Yeah.
We really only have about 4, right? 2 police, the water, one up on Curtis Mulligan, which is the pricey one.
And
the
all
bus
the ones
system.
that we've also maybe applied for and stuff.
Yes.
So, I'm just,
No,
I think
good
we'd
to
be
know.
good. Thank you.
And again, I'll see if I can get in contact with the people about Earth Day. They're asking for an 8 to 5 closing of East Union. Well, and historically, that's what's been asked. They really weren't sure what they're going to ask. And I asked somebody to show up. I requested, obviously. The person I talked to was barely talking, and it sounded like they had a bad cold. So I'm glad they decided not to come and share.
Okay.
Is that everything?
We're finished.
Having addressed all items on our agenda, we stand adjourned.